Hello, class. Welcome to our lesson today, the second part of adding rational numbers. We're going to go through a few applications and make sure you look at those for your homework tonight. You also want to make sure you keep track of your negative signs as what you did in the previous lesson to keep track of them and make sure answers that are negative, okay, you write them as negative, okay, think about if you should add or subtract, things like that. First question here, you'll notice that the denominators here aren't the same. So you have a 5 here and a 3 here. So you're going to have to find a common denominator of 15 by multiplying the first group by 3 and the second group by 5. What you'll notice from this point is I wrote in red kind of the same problem, but notice it's different and backwards. This is really a subtraction problem. Just take the higher number as if it wasn't negative. So think about like the absolute value of the number. And then subtract the higher one minus lower one. I had to do a little bit of borrowing here as an improper fraction or an improper fraction. Okay, either option would work in this situation. I should get 11/15ths after I borrow from the 2 and make it 21 because 6 plus 15 is 21. But realize that it's not 11/15ths, it's actually negative 11/15ths because of the fact that the negative number was bigger to start with. Remember, when you multiply fractions or rational numbers, you got to make them improper first. Then the suggestion is always cross-simplifying. That's probably a good suggestion in most cases. And then you have your improper fraction or your mixed number. It depends on what type of answer they're looking for. But those are some options for you in multiplication of rational numbers. The next one is just a subtraction. Find a common denominator. It again has the borrowing technique. I didn't show as much of that work here. Obviously, you can make them improper, but it's going to be a lot more work. So my suggestion is you start to look at the borrowing technique a little bit closer. So borrow 1 from the 7 and add 20 to the 8. That's why it's 28. That's one suggestion as you're looking at that. The one on the right, remember for division, you have to do keep, change, flip. But you can't do keep, change, flip until you make everything improper. So multiplication and division both have the same rules. You have to make them improper first, and then for division, do keep, change, flip. There's lots of simplifying to be done on this question. That'll save you a lot of time as you're looking at it. So make sure that you simplify to get an answer, in this case of 2/9. Next question is just plugging in. So my suggestion when plugging in numbers for variables is always to put them in parentheses. The other thing is, notice this 2 out front. I made it 2 over 1. Every single integer that you've ever written could be written as a rational number, as a fraction, if you just put it over 1. And I can't tell you how many times I've told that to students in other classes after they realize, like, oh, well, it's just 2 over 1, and then you can start solving from there. You'll notice that these have a nice common denominator, and you simplify. Always simplify your answer. You don't want 2 over 2. You want just 1, and it's negative because the bigger number, 3 over 2, is bigger than 1 over 2. So a few things to keep in mind for that situation. Next, you'll have b plus 4a. Remember, 4a means multiplication. It doesn't mean just put 4 next to a and make it 4.5. Okay, so it's 4 times 1/2. And make it 4 over 1. You'll notice here I didn't simplify, and the reason for that is the other one is over 2. So actually, it's okay that it's over 2 in this question. And it's a little bit easier to solve if you would just leave it. That's kind of a hard thing to recognize from time to time, but it might help you be successful. On the other question, it's absolute value. Some students miss the absolute value question because they want to make this negative 5 over 2 positive 5 over 2. But you can't do the absolute value. Think of it like parentheses. You have to do the stuff in the parentheses first. So you have to add those pieces together, which is actually a subtraction question. And then you'll get your answer of 2. So something to keep in mind as you're looking at that scenario. The next question deals with stock market gains and losses. Maybe some of you have seen that on the news. At the bottom, it's got a scrolling all of these different stocks, and there's an up arrow in green or a down arrow in red, and it just shows how far up or down things are going each day. In this question, what's not given is whatever the starting amount of the stock is. For example, if I were to invest some money, what I want to know at the end is, did I make money or did I lose money? Because if I made money, I know I have my original amount of money that I spent or invested. So there's never going to be a starting amount on a lot of these type of questions, and it's not needed. It could be you invested $50, or it could have been you invested $5 million. You're looking for the amount of change in the stock price, the gain or loss. You could go systematically down the list, so you could start with the first one, add the second one, add the third one, add the fourth one, and add the fifth one. One suggestion might be to do it kind of like the banking questions and add up all the negatives and all the positives separately. So that's what I've done on the screen. And then combine them one time with one subtraction. And the benefit of that is you're doing more addition than subtraction. So this ends up being $5.40, which means whatever the stock used to cost, Now it's $5.40 more, which means I've made money. And that's kind of what you're looking at for this scenario. Most questions that are real-world application like this one have that same logic where you add a bunch of numbers up and compare. This question correlates to page 55, number 20. It's actually one of your homework questions, but I thought it might be a good idea to at least talk about one. This has more than two numbers that you're looking at, so 6 plus negative 4 3/4 plus negative 2 1/8. I'm going to choose to add the last two numbers first because they're both negative. So I find a common denominator of 6/8 and 1/8, and I combine those together. 4 and 2 is 6, and then 1 and 6 is 7/8. Notice it's negative 6 and 7/8, and I did that because I can add those together, and then 6 and 7/8 are opposites because one's negative and one's positive, and now I subtract, and that one ends up being pretty easy. 6 minus 6 goes away, and you're left with 7/8, but there's more negatives, not by much, just by 7/8. So when you are doing addition, same idea as integers, you can choose what order you add those pieces. And my suggestion would be add all the negatives, add all the positives, kind of like what we did with the stock question on the previous slide. And you could use that to help answer your questions on one like these. On your homework, you got questions 1 through 3, and then 15 through 28. That's all in both sections. Most of the questions shouldn't take too long to find. Make sure that you're checking your odd answers in the back and asking questions if you have any. Have a good day, everybody.